everyone, it's Emily with Hearty Soul. Welcome back to the channel. This week I'm going to be showing you how I built this flip-top workbench. It was a really exciting project and I'm so glad to finally get to be using it. I'm going to share all of the tips and tricks to building this workbench and how I designed it. I'm going to show you exactly how it works. I started this project just like I start so many of my other projects, with a piece of paper and pencil and just getting all of the ideas and thoughts and measurements down onto paper. This table is super ideal if you have limited space in your work area and you need space for your larger tools and also a nice flat working space for any other projects that you might have going on. I started out by gathering up all of the lumber I knew I would need for my project from our scrap pile. I started by building my base, which ended up being 28 inches tall by 72 inches long. Once I got my sides built, I added in 5 2x4s as braces. They were 36 1/4 inches long. I ended up switching out these 2x4s for a solid 2x2 to act as the centerpiece for this workbench. Then I assembled my flip-top tables out of 2x6s, added some bracing and some plywood. I used a 1 1/8 inch dowel to act as the pivot for these tabletops. So after I got both of my tabletops centered and level, I found the center of each of those tabletops and I drilled a 1 1/8 inch hole for my 1 1/8 inch dowel rod to go through. Once I got both of my pivots in place, I added 4 72 inch apron boards around all of the edges to act as a support and keep my dowel rods in place. Next, I added 4 holes on all of the tables to add in some carriage bolts to make sure that my flip top stayed put while I was using them. These carriage bolts made sure that my work surface was level and stable as I was working. Next, I flipped my workbench on its side and I added my 3-inch lockable casters. These casters are fantastic. I use these casters in a lot of my projects. I love that they're so big, they go over bumps, in and out of my garage, and lock when I need them to stay put. Once I got my casters on, I wanted to give my flip tops a good try. Some of my boards weren't exactly new and fresh, and they might have even been a little warped, so it did take some adjusting to make sure everything flipped easily. After that, I started in making the corner pieces that would help keep my inside plywood sturdy and level. I cut my piece of plywood to fit right inside of my 2x6 frame and right on top of my 2x4 pieces. I place that in But first I wanted to make sure my miter saw was going to fit just right. Can I tell you how much I really love my leaf blower? I mean, like, really love my leaf blower. This is how I made sure that my miter saw was going to work in this space. I wanted to make sure I had enough support on either side for when I laid a board on top of it, and wanted to make sure it wasn't going to fall off. I glued in my little 2x4 bracing pieces and then added my plywood right on top of that. Next, I drilled in some 5/8 inch holes for my carriage bolts that would attach my miter saw to the flip top. I was so excited when I flipped this over and my miter saw didn't fall off. It was amazing. Next up, the table saw side. I again made sure it was level, added some holes for my 5-inch carriage bolts to make sure that everything was steady and level. And then I cut and fit my next plywood piece for my table saw. I also added a few extension pieces for this table saw. I wanted to make sure I had some support that was at the same level going all the way across. This part took a bit of tinkering with, but eventually I got it. I made the attachments for my table saw so that it could get bolted to the flip top. I used 4 bolt hinges to attach my table saw. I wanted to be able to make sure that no matter where I was, where the table was, what size of wood I was cutting, that I could pivot my table saw not only from top to bottom, but also directionally from side to side, depending on the size of the material I was cutting. Once I got my table saw completely attached, I grabbed some 60 grit sandpaper and sanded down my whole workbench. I wanted to make sure that this table, which was compiled of a bunch of recycled lumber, looked like one piece. So I smoothed all of the edges down and added some of my most favorite stain, which is a dark walnut, just to make sure that this entire piece looked like one cohesive workbench. I'm so excited how it turned out. I love being able to have my tools handy when I need them, and then also having space to put all sorts of things together. To grab the plans and the full detail list of instructions, head on over to the blog at hardysoul.net. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great week.